Hey everybody, Sean here with Elite Handyman Services of Pennsylvania. Saturdays are for the DIYers, and this series is for anybody who wants to make an attempt at making their home a little bit nicer on their own. I absolutely love taking care of clients in the greater Philadelphia area, but I'm also passionate about helping people make improvements on their homes on their own. So if you're looking to improve your home and you want to try DIY, this series is for you. Last time we talked all about how to prepare a room for paint. Today, we're going to talk about how to paint a room. Painting is generally pretty involved. I'm going to talk through the order that I approach painting. I'm going to talk through the tools that I use. I'm going to cover as much as I can, but I may not get to everything in a short period of time. So if you have things that work for you, or if there's something that I may have missed, go ahead and drop that down in the comments. Let's get into it. When I'm painting a room, I like to let gravity be my guide. I start high and I work low. And what that lets me do is it lets me catch drips. When you're working with paint, whether you're a DIYer or you're an experienced painter, you're gonna have drips. It's just a fact of life. So working from high to low minimizes the drips, but it also lets you catch those drips as they happen. So the first thing I have in my toolbox to fix those drips is a box of towels. Something else that I use, alcohol swabs. I use my 5-in-1 tool when I have to, and those are the things that I use to catch drips and to fix drips. So starting high, we start with our ceiling, and then we work to our walls, and then our woodwork. And everybody does it a little bit differently. This is what works for me, and this is how I do it. So the first thing you do with your ceiling, you're using generally a flat white paint. You go ahead and open up the can. I use my 5-in-1 tool to open up that can. Whenever you're dealing with paint, whether it's a new can of paint or whether it's been on your shelf for a little while and you're pulling it out to touch something up, you always want to stir it. So I always keep sticks to stir my paint with in my toolbox. You can get them for free at the big box stores like Home Depot when you buy paint. All you do, once you open up your can, you work your way through nice and slow, nice and easy, and you'll generally feel a lot of times with paint, even when it's new, you'll feel everything in there start to kind of combine, and you'll know when it's ready for paint. The consistency will change just a little bit. I'll pull my stirring stick out, I'll take a towel, I'll wipe it down, and I'll throw my stirring stick away. When I'm painting, I always have a Home Depot bucket with a trash bag. I'll put my stirring stick right in there. I'll also put dirty towels, and anything that could drip paint somewhere goes right into the trash. So you've opened up your paint, you've stirred it up, you're ready to cut in. When you cut in, you want to use a really good brush. My favorite brush right now is the Black Max by Wiz. It's got an oval at the top. It holds a lot of paint, which makes cutting in super efficient. It's got a nice angle to it. This one is 2.5 inches wide. I like 2.5 inches for cutting in surfaces because I can cut in large or small surfaces. So you'll take paint from your can and you'll pour it into a smaller container. When I'm cutting in, I love to use solo cups. So I'll pour my paint into a solo cup, fits right into the palm of my hand, nice and comfortable, and you're ready to cut in. All you do is you dip your brush and you just cover about 2 inches of the surface so that you can get a nice and smooth finish later on when you roll. So you cover about 2 inches and you go all the way around the perimeter. Once you're done cutting in, you're ready to roll. You'll take your paint, you'll pour it into a rolling liner, which sits in a rolling pan. You pour it in, and you get your roller. Just like using a good brush is important, using the right type of roller and a good roller is important as well. This is a 9-inch roller. This will generally serve your purposes as a DIYer. You can get them bigger or smaller. For very large areas, you could use an 18-inch roller. I wouldn't necessarily recommend it because a large roller holds more paint and there's a possibility that you could waste some material. So a 9-inch roller is good to go for a DIYer. I also regularly use 4-inch rollers and 6-inch rollers for woodwork, trim, and cabinetry. The roller cover is just as important as the size. Roller covers have different size naps. Your nap is the thickness of the material, and that has the biggest impact on your finish. The smaller the thickness, generally the smoother the finish. This is a 3/8 nap. 3/8 inch nap generally works really well for smooth walls and lightly textured walls. Thicker naps are better for highly textured walls and outdoor surfaces. But 3/8 should generally suit your purposes as a DIYer. And when you're ready to roll, you're gonna wanna use a pole extender. And the pole extender, what this does is it keeps you a little farther away from the surface so you can see a little bit more clearly the big picture. And it also allows for a nice smooth finish. So all you do is you dip your roller in the tray. You want to get your roller nice and full, and then you want to roll it up here toward the top of the tray because you don't want it dripping while you're painting. And then you are ready to go ahead and roll your surface. With ceilings and really any surface, minimum 2 coats. So what you'll do is you'll roll your first coat. While I'm rolling, I like to use a W type of pattern, again, for a smooth, consistent finish. You roll the entire ceiling, you let it dry. While it's drying, you can go ahead and move on to another task. And once it's dry, usually after about an hour to 2 hours, depending on the paint, and it'll tell you right on the can when it's dry to the touch and when it's ready for a recoat. Really important that you go ahead and you follow the instructions on that can. So 2 coats on the ceilings. Once I've done the ceilings, I go to the walls, and it's the same procedure for the walls. You open up the can, you stir it up really good, and you cut in and then you roll. The difference between walls and ceilings is generally you have a larger surface area in the room of wall. So what I like to do is I like to cut in a wall and then I roll a wall. Because if you were to cut in an entire room and then roll the entire room, your finish would be a little inconsistent because it takes a long time to cut in a full room. And while you're cutting in that whole room, the paint is going to be drying. So cut in the wall, roll the wall, and then on to the next wall. And that's how I like to do it. And again, the same procedure as a ceiling. You want to do 1 coat, let it dry, do your second coat. Generally on walls, you want to use a nice semi-gloss finish. Once I'm done with the walls, that's when I go ahead and paint the woodwork, the trim around doors, baseboards, all of that. And once I've painted those things with usually a high gloss white paint, I'll go ahead and I'll caulk. If I'm caulking a small room, I'll use a tube. If I'm caulking, a tube that's just a squeeze tube. If I'm caulking a larger room or multiple rooms, I'll use tubes that go into a caulk gun. And if you're using a caulk gun, you want a 10-inch caulk gun with a 10-inch tube. That'll generally suit your purposes. The one that I use is by Anvil. I really like it because it's got a poking tool on the end that lets you puncture the caulk, so you don't need to worry about also having a box cutter or something like that. And in between coats, I like to sand. I'll use 150 grit, and it's a very, very light sand to get you a nice, smooth finish. Once I've finished painting the room, I will walk it through. I'll check every surface that I've painted for drips and things like that, any kind of inconsistencies that might need a touch-up. And then I'll take up the flooring protection, and once the paint dries, we'll put the room back in order, walk it through with the homeowner, and make sure they're nice and happy with the results. So there you have it. That's how you paint a room. It's the procedure that I use. It works really well for me. If this content is helpful to you, go ahead, like, subscribe, share. And if you have decided that this is way more work than you want to do, you don't want to deal with purchasing all of the materials that you need, and you're in the greater Philadelphia area, don't hesitate to reach out. I love to paint. It's one of my favorite types of jobs to do. So go ahead and contact me and we'll discuss your paint job, and we'll go from there. Thank you again for watching, and I'll see you next time.